But if you meditate regularly, give a little time to God, and make the connection with God, the conscious contact with God, then your marriage must succeed. Because if you take God with you in any action, that action must be right. And more especially, perhaps, in marriage. And one thing that comes to my mind to those who are married, or going to be married, is, watch out for one thing. It is the fear which enters into the heart of your mate. Jealousy, you can call it, but jealousy comes because of fear. Fear of what? That they're going to lose the other one. Understand that. In whatever activity of life you find yourselves, even in the religious activity, do not leave the mate behind. Even though perhaps your mate will not come along with you, let your mate know that you are united in the love of God and you're going to stay with him or her until the end. And even then, if the mate does not come along, there'll be perfect understanding, no obstruction. And you can never tell but what it is the divine will that you save the soul of your mate. Understand that. Watch out for fear. I've seen so many people where the other one fears they're going to be left behind in any activity. Why should you leave them behind? God has brought you together in a sacred communion. Let the mate know that you are never going to leave her or him. And you'll find many of your difficulties will pass away. That fear is a terrible thing. Because deep in the heart of everybody is the omniscience of God that feels for the other one and doesn't want to be left behind. Understand that one thing. It will save you much trouble. Now, marriage is not the sole purpose of life. The sole purpose of life is to find God. That's what we're here for. We're here to find Him. And if you make that your sole purpose, then, whether it is in the cards, so to speak, for you to be married or not, will not make so much difference. Perhaps it is for you to be successfully married. Perhaps it isn't. But don't you want to do what God wants you to do? Do not I want to do what God wants me to do in spite of what comes? Certainly we do. And if we get that attitude in the beginning, if we take that attitude in the beginning and hold to it, realize our first purpose in life is to know God. Having contact with Him. Here I am, Father, I want you. If you want me to be married, I want to be married. If you don't, I don't want to be married. It will come out right. You will never lose. But unless you make that contact with God, make that paramount in your life, whether you like it or not, that's what we're here for. As all the saints say, to return home to God. To go back home to God in a conscious way. And so, personally, I would rather leave the consummation of my marriage in the hands of God. Make the contact with Him. Ask Him to lead me in the right way, and then with full faith, go ahead. I don't want to be married, or I wouldn't want to be married if it wasn't coming out right. Would you? If you take God with you, it's got to come out right. It's got to come out right. Because He's the sole doer. He's in the heart of each and every one of us. It must come out right. Let us take God with us in every action. And so, it seems to me that this question of this divorce rate in America, which is so high, has come about because people do not heed the things of which we have just been talking. They have not made the marriage on the indissoluble bond of divine love. Great Gandhi said about his mate, he said, I don't know, he says, but that woman influences me more than any other woman in the world. I don't know why, he said. No doubt she has more faults than I can see. But he says there's an indissoluble bond between us. That's the greatest thing, isn't it? And what's that indissoluble bond? the great love of the one Father. Now that can be between any two souls. It can be between the guru and his disciple. It can be between husband and wife. But that indissoluble bond must be there in any relationship, more especially in the relationship of marriage. And so we have the great example of Larry DeMarcia, who was a householder, but look at the heights to which he reached. He was a householder. He was married and had 2 children. He lived an exemplary life, tended to his duties, worked for the British government. And yet, in the silence of his own privacy, he practiced Kriya Yoga, and he attained the freedom of God's omniscient consciousness, even while being married and carrying out his marital duties. That's why he is such a great saint. He was a householder. Like most of us here, I believe. He said, be in the world, but not of it. He showed that man and woman could live together, be in the world, but not of it, like the lotus leaf in the pond, not attached at all. And in the silence of his little room, he practiced Kriya Yoga